Good day, everybody. This is your hillbilly historian coming to you from the hills of Appalachia here in East Tennessee, where we talk about stuff you won't find in your high school or college textbooks. Of course, this issue coming up, you might eventually find in your high school or college textbooks. Maybe. But I want to talk about a guy by the name of Doris Miller. Now, Doris, you would assume would be a woman's name, but in this case, it's not. It's a man's name. Now, Doris Miller was a mess servant, officer's servant, or officer's attendant on the USS battleship West Virginia, sitting in Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. And when the evil, cruel, sneaky Japs, buck-toothed Japs, attacked the United States without any warning, killed about 2,400 Americans that day in Pearl Harbor. A few civilians as well. And started World War II. But they had torpedoed and bombed the West Virginia, which was sitting on Battleship Row that day. And Doris Miller was a sailor, officer's attendant on the West Virginia, and his captain got a mortal wound, and he helped carry his captain out, get him off the West Virginia, even though the captain died from his wounds. And Doris Miller, they ordered him to help carry reloads for the anti-aircraft guns on the West Virginia, and he was assisting with that. Then he saw a gun that was unattended. He went over to it. It was loaded, and he fired and fired and fired at the Japanese planes until he ran out of ammunition. Then he helped a whole lot of sailors get off the West Virginia before it finally just turned over and sank. And he was awarded a medal for his exceptional heroism on that day. And Nimitz himself pinned the medal. I think it was called the Navy Cross, the third highest medal you could get in the Navy in those days. And Doris Miller was awarded, and Admiral Nimitz pinned the medal on him personally. Because Doris Miller was a great hero. And then he was transferred to the CVE. That's an escort carrier. Now, an escort carrier was a small carrier. I think we built about 80 of them in World War II. We had about 21, 22 frontline attack carriers, which carried 70 or 80 planes, and were used in the main attack on the Japanese islands and Japanese Navy. And the escort carrier was a smaller carrier, carried about 20, 25 planes. And when the mainline carrier would lose a plane or two, then the escort carrier would fly a couple up. And that always kept the strength of the mainline attack carriers. They were called CVs, aircraft carriers. CVE was an escort carrier. They were smaller. I think they built about 80 of them in World War II. But they were invented by a guy by the name of Spigweed. Spigweed was a naval airman who was part of the first pilots in the Navy. and on the first aircraft carrier. And Spigweed was at home one night, and he fell down the stairs in his townhouse, slipped, fell, broke his neck, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. And they said he'd never walk again. He's quadriplegic. But he put himself to work, made his nerves go back together enough to get current down his nervous system. He started out, he finally moved a toe, then he moved a foot, and he eventually worked his way through rehab and everything, where he was able to get around using crutches on each arm. And he never left the Navy. He went back to work. And Spigweed, he invented the escort carrier and developed it. And then he never really retired from the Navy until he had to. And he wrote something like 30 movie scripts. I've seen his name up on the screen, Spigweed. Frank Weed, I think, was his real name, but everybody called him Spig. Spigweed. He wrote movie scripts. Had about 30 movies that he wrote scripts for. They were like World War II naval movies, and they were really good. He wrote good stories. But anyway, Doris Miller, who was on the West Virginia, decorated hero in the West Virginia, he became an officer's attendant on what's called a CVE. The CV stood for aircraft carrier, and CVE was escort carrier. And now they call them CVNs, which the CVN, the N stands for nuclear aircraft carriers, CVNs. And we've only built, we only have 81 aircraft carriers under construction, 2 that are under construction now, another USS CVN Enterprise, and the CVN Doris Miller, which is CVN 81. The Enterprise will be CVN 80, and so we have these CVNs, and one of them's being named after Doris Miller. And he was that much of a hero. But he was assigned to a CVE after the West Virginia, and it was torpedoed and sank in 1943. And out of 900 men on board, 600 went to their deaths, and Doris Miller was one of them. And they are honoring him by naming a CVN, which is the greatest warship ever built. The Enterprise and the Doris Miller are being built side by side, but they're pushing the Enterprise to get out quicker. So the Doris Miller should be launched about somewhere between 1932 and 2032 and 2034. And he will be honored because he was one of the great heroes of Pearl Harbor, and he regrettably died in the sinking of a CVE. And that is today's story about a great American, a great American who served his country well, died in the service of his country, That's why we should never let these communist, socialist, Democrats ever take over this country ever again. Never, never, never. Because they don't honor heroes, they honor crooks and gangsters. You know, people who die of fentanyl overdose like that gangster up there. That they even built statues to that died from a fentanyl overdose. Excuse me. But anyway, this is your hillbilly historian honoring Doris Miller, a great, great American. And signing off from the hills of Appalachia here in East Tennessee. You have a good day.